Dear fellow creators, I'm sitting here roasting in the sunshine testing this variable ND filter, but putting that aside, the purpose of this video is to help somebody shooting APS-C make that transition to full frame. I'm seeing a lot of videos where they're showing incredible lenses for full frame, but they are all big, heavy, expensive. If you already have a set of loved APS-C lenses, what does the full frame equivalents actually look like? Are they indeed much bigger, heavier, and more expensive? Let's find out. So here we have the APS-C 13mm, amazing lens, love it to bits. And then we have the 18mm for full frame f2.8. So if we use the crop factor, this is the equivalent of 12mm, so this is slightly wider, tiny cheap package versus the Viltrox, which is double the price and significantly heavier. And looking at the cameras themselves as well, so I've got the smallest interchangeable lens APS-C camera to my knowledge. It is still bigger and heavier than the full frame ZV-E1. I don't know how Sony achieved this, and the price difference, once you consider that you can get some cheaper lenses that will perform better than APS-C lenses that are larger and heavier, then the price gap isn't as large as you might think. So we have very much a similar situation here. If we look at the kit lenses, have a look. It's near enough half the size. You can see just how small it is, and it's lighter. It's a lovely lens. It's not as tactile as the Fuji. The Fuji can really very smoothly open and close it. On the Sony, it's a bit of a different design, so you have to extend it first, and now it's in operational mode, and actually, funnily enough, then the sizes are quite similar, even though this is still much lighter. If you zoom in quite quickly, then it's smooth, but if you're trying to do very small increments, it sort of sticks a little bit. So in terms of performance and in terms of image quality, they are quite similar. So this is an f2 to 8 and this is an f4 to 5.6. Okay, so if we actually run the numbers, the Sony is a slightly smaller range. But in terms of the low light performance, the bokeh, we're talking slightly better performance than you get out of the APS-C lens. I bought both of them used. I'll put the prices up on the screen. But there you go. So again, another example where the full frame lens is smaller, lighter, and it's a fantastic lens. It's incredibly sharp. Sony did a great job, and Fuji did as well. I mean, this is one of the best APS-C kit lenses in my opinion. But full frame has a viable alternative without being heavy. So I just got my ZV-E10. I still have a lot of learning and testing and experimenting to do. But have a look at this spreadsheet. So if we look at equivalent lenses, we can see that pretty much all the time you have smaller and cheaper and lighter alternatives on full frame. So for instance, we have that same Viltrox 13mm. I agree, maybe the 18mm is not the fairer comparison. It's a slightly different focal length. But if we look at a like for like, you have this Sony one here, which is an f1.2 equivalent, not f1.4, so significantly brighter. And if we look at the size and if we look at the weight compared to the Viltrox, we can see that size-wise it's smaller, and weight-wise quite significantly smaller. Let's look at another example. So we have this Sony f2.5 50mm. So that's f1.7-ish roughly equivalent, and the nearest one from Fuji would be the f2 prime. So the f2 prime is 170 grams, the Sony one is 174, so like for like. And it's a little bit fatter, so it will take a slightly larger lens filter, but in your bag, effectively the same size. Let's have a look at the Tamron 11 to 20, which is an absolute killer lens that people have been waiting for a long time. So if we look at that one, it's 18 to 20 f2.8. Now f2.8, the equivalent would be a slow zoom, really, an f4 zoom. But we can actually get an f2.8, which is an f1.9 equivalent. But if we want to look at a like for like, then we'll look at probably this one, but you have more range in this one. Pretty much the same weight, a tiny little difference, and it's the same size. So it is still better, especially if you look at the f2.8, which is again f1.9, say f1.8-ish equivalent on APS-C. All of those are stupidly light. You've got 145 grams, 160 grams, 170 grams, and it's amazing. It's lighter than anything on APS-C. But you think, okay, maybe the Tele ones, this is where APS-C has an advantage. I'm sure you've seen other videos, you've seen camera conspiracies talking about the advantage of the lightness of Fuji for Tele, but no. So if we look at the Fuji 55 to 200, so we've got an f3.5 to 4.8 and it's heavier than the full frame equivalent. Mind blown. With clear zoom, this actually goes up to 300. And if you look at the size, so it's noticeably longer, but it's lighter and it's faster. Plus the advantages of a full frame sensor, plus 120 frames per second. When you start getting the G Master lenses and when you start getting fast zooms, then yes, they are very big, very heavy. But if you look at the equivalents, once you run the maths, once you see that your f2.8 is actually an f1.8, okay, well try to find an f1.8 zoom for APS-C that's anywhere near this size and weight. And when you realize that your nearest equivalent is actually an f4, your f2.8 zooms, they are bigger and heavier. But yeah, you get the point. We've done the kit lens comparison, so you can see the actual stats on that. When you actually do the maths and when you look at the equivalent in terms of reach, focal length, as well as things like clear zoom, which is just not an option on Fuji, then full frame starts to win in every case. Even if we look at prices, the prices of some of these lenses are insanely good. You've got £100 lenses, which are really fantastic lenses. 113, 135, 140 pounds, 190 pounds. Even if you look at quite the impressive zooms, you can get a 450 pounds for 11 to 20 millimeter equivalent. I mean, the Fuji versions are grand. So even when it comes to price, you can pick up full frame lenses secondhand much cheaper than X-mount lenses secondhand. It's just crazy to me. And just to explain what's in the spreadsheet, so I've highlighted in green anything that jumps out at me as particularly great. And then I've highlighted lenses that are either particularly cheap or particularly light or have a very good, useful and versatile range. The ones that I've highlighted in bold are the lenses that I've ordered, and some of them I have already received. What a surprising conclusion. After testing more than 10 different lenses on X-mount and finding my absolute favorites that I really want to have on my full frame setup, the full frame equivalents are smaller, lighter, and cheaper. Historically, full frame was just unachievable for your typical hobbyist, whereas now prices of APS-C have crept up so much that there is no longer a gap, and in fact, getting an equivalent APS-C system will cost you more. Sure, you have some bargains like the ZV-E1, which does not have IBIS built in, so that limits the functionality somewhat. So if you're buying like for like and you want to have an APS-C system that has IBIS in it, then you are looking at the Fuji, and the Fuji is bigger, heavier, more expensive, and has worse performance. I love my Fuji, but this was a shock to me. Sony has really changed the game with the ZV-E1. It is a very exciting time to be a creator. Thank you very much for watching. If this was at all useful, please like and subscribe. Now we have a concert of planes / banging noises. This video is going great.